Hey all, so this is going to be our last video on elasticity. So in this third part, we're going to be talking about all the other different types of elasticity outside the elasticity of demand. What are the strongest days of the week? Saturday and Sunday, because the rest are weekdays.
Alright, so in the past two videos, we talked about the price elasticity of demand and how to calculate the price elasticity of demand using our two equations, right? Percent change, right? The percent change in quantity over the percent change in price. And we also learned in the last video, we can also use the total revenue test to determine the elasticity of our demand curve. Well, here in this video, we're going over the three other different types of elasticity. So we're going to start off with the price elasticity of supply. We're then going to go into the cross-price elasticity, and we're going to finish it off with income elasticity. Well, the good news for us is that our price elasticity of supply is basically the same thing as our price elasticity of demand. The only difference being is that we're looking at our supply curve and not our demand curve, right? So if our price elasticity of demand measures how sensitive consumers are to a change in price, our price elasticity of supply measures how sensitive producers are to a change in price here. Well, the other different thing here is that unlike the elasticity of demand, right, our elasticity of supply is based on time limitations, right? Well, just because there's a change in price doesn't mean that it is immediately going to impact our supply, right? Producers need time to produce more, and it's going to take time to produce less as well, right? So more so than our elasticity of demand, our price elasticity of supply has some time limitations on it. And so we're going to say most goods have inelastic supply in the short run, right? Because here it's very insensitive to a change in price, right? So let's say the price of apples increases by $100. Well, that doesn't mean immediately there's going to be more apples picked, right? Because it's going to take a while for workers to realize the increase, or producers to realize the increase in price, and then send out more workers to pick more apples here. So in the short run, it is very inelastic, our supply curve. Most goods, however, have very elastic supply in the long run, right? They're very sensitive to a change in price here. And then here, perfectly inelastic supply is when our quantity supply curve doesn't change, right? And we're going to say that it's a vertical line. In other words, right, how our different curves looks, right? We have inelastic, right? Unit elastic, and then we also have perfectly elastic. It is the exact same, right, for our supply. Right? So here, if our supply curve is perfectly vertical, we're going to say that is perfectly inelastic, just like demand. If our supply curve is perfectly 45 degrees, we're going to say that's unit elastic, just like demand. And if our supply curve is perfectly horizontal, well, we're going to say that is perfectly elastic, just like demand. Right? And also the characteristics of inelastic supply and elastic supply are the same thing as the characteristics of elastic demand and inelastic demand here. The big thing for us, yet again, is going to be that elasticity coefficient. Right? And same thing here. So here, right, this is just basically what I was saying. It's the same thing as demand, but instead of the inverse relationship downward sloping demand curve, we're looking at an upward sloping supply curve. That is the difference here. Other than that, everything else is the same between elastic supply and the elastic demand. It is 100% the same concept, except we're just looking at it from the two different curves, demand and supply. All right. Our second of three other elasticities, right, is going to be cross-price elasticity. And so what cross-price elasticity shows us is it tells us how sensitive quantity demand of one product is to a change in price of a different product. Okay? And so our equation is right here. It is going to be the percent change in the quantity of product B over the percent change in the price of product A, right? So percent change in the quantity of B over the percent change in the price of A. So in other words, what the cross price of elasticity tells us is it tells us whether a good is going to be a substitute or a complement. And we said, right, with the price elasticity demand and our price elasticity supply, we don't care if the number is positive or negative because we're always going to be taking the absolute value of whatever number. Well, for here, right, for our cross-price elasticity and also for our income elasticity, we don't care about the number. The number itself does not matter unless the question is actually asking for a specific number here when you're calculating it. What matters to us more is going to be whether the coefficient is either positive or negative. That is what matters more, right? So here, if the number is negative 10 for our cross price elasticity, we are going to say that the good is a complement. So it doesn't matter if the number is negative 10, negative 5, negative 1, negative 0.1, or negative 1,000, right? Just because it's negative tells us that the good is going to be a complementary good. And the opposite is true, right? Let's say it's positive 1,000, positive 10, positive 5, positive 1, positive 0.1. It doesn't matter to the extent that it's positive or the larger or smaller the number. Just because it's positive, it tells us that the good is a substitute good, right? And that's all our cross-price elasticity tells us. So remember, our equation is going to be the percent change in the quantity of B over the percent change in the price of A. But unlike our elasticity demand or elasticity supply, we don't take the absolute value. We care if it is positive or negative because that number itself doesn't matter. But if it's positive, it is a substitutable good. If it is negative, it is a complementary good. Okay? And so on the next couple slides, just like always, there are a couple guided practices here. The answers, yet again, just like always, are in sort of the comment or the note section of the Google slide. So you're more than welcome to do this and practice so you guys get a better handle on this particular concept. Our last type of elasticity is income elasticity. And so what income elasticity tells us is how sensitive quantity demanded is to a change in income. So in other words, if let's say you get a raise or your salary increases by $10,000, well, how does that impact quantity demanded? How much is it going to go up by? And if you lose your job and you lose all your money, well, how much is that going to impact quantity demanded? How much is quantity demanded going to fall? Well, our equation is the percent change in quantity over the percent change in income, as you see on the screen right here. Right? So percent change in quantity over the percent change in income. So here, it tells us, our income elasticity tells us if there are normal or inferior goods. And so just like our cross-price elasticity, we do not take the absolute value. What we care about more is whether the coefficient is positive or negative. So remember, our equation is the percent change in quantity over the percent change in income. And so here, right, let's say it gives us a negative 1. Well, that tells us our coefficient is negative, so it tells us that the good is an inferior good, right? However, right, if let's say this equation gave us a positive 1, right, it's positive, so it tells us that it is a normal good here. So yet again, you might get like free response questions that actually ask you to calculate the actual number of the income and the cross-price elasticity. And then you would actually have to calculate it. But more often than not, what matters more is whether it is positive or negative, because that is going to determine whether for cross price it's a substitute or a complementary good, and for income, whether it is a normal or an inferior good. All right. And yet again, for this, right, there's a guided practice, the answer in the notes, and I would highly urge you guys to practice with it just so you know. And then there's going to be a separate video that goes over all the different practice AP questions, right? So if you guys do it and you guys want to see the answers or explanations as to why the answers are the way they are, right? Just look out for this Elasticity practice AP question review video that will be posted within the next couple days. All right, guys, so that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys learned a lot, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.